standing up in the god-awful middle of the night on the Isle of Wight to say hello to all of you. He's got so many friends out there around the world, and he has to keep a very strange schedule to sometimes say hello to all of them. Welcome back, David.
Thank you, Jeff. Actually, I'm feeling remarkably full of the joys for this time in the morning.
Good job. Well, whatever you put in your tea, just remember what it was. Uh, here, you read this. This is a shorty. I just read it last hour, but you'd like this. 2,300 years ago, long before Islam, Arabs discovered that forcing people to cover their nose and mouths broke their will and individuality and depersonalized them. It made them submissive. That's why they imposed later on every woman the mandatory use of a fabric over her face. Part 2. Modern psychology explains it. Without a face, we don't exist as independent beings. The child looks in the mirror between the ages of 2 and 3 and is discovered as an independent being. The mask is the beginning of deleting individuality. He who does not know his history is certainly condemned to repeat it. So there's your mask. It's an old tool to break people down. That's what they're doing. Nothing new, no surprises, except it's so damn old. It's over 2,300 years ago they knew about it. And David has been on the forefront, and I hope you got a chance to see his Trafalgar Square, which is about 6 minutes of pure dynamite. Just great. How many people showed up there when you spoke?
There was about 35,000 in Trafalgar
Yeah.
Square, and and this is the point I've been trying to get across for weeks and weeks and months of this. Authority has no power except the power we give to them. And
Yes, sir.
they had a rule. They've tightened it now, not least as a result of Trafalgar Square, where no more than 30 people could meet together. And 35,000 turned up, and of course the police could do nothing about it. Just too many people. And
Right.
we've got another
Of
one
course.
on the 26th of September as well, because we have
Uh-huh.
to keep this momentum going. Now, talk about synchronicity, Jeff. Um, you've just read out that passage about Islam and masks, and I sat down here out of my bed about 10 minutes ago, and waiting for me was an email from a lady called Kathy O'Brien, who was one of the people that was uh, kept captive in the MK Ultra mind control
Kathy O'Brien, Mark
abomination.
Phillips. I know it. I
Yeah,
know it well. Yeah.
and she contacted me a couple of days ago, pointing out
Mm-hmm.
that her daughter Kelly, who I met a number of times, who was born into captivity in MK Ultra, from the age of 2, she said, uh, Kelly was forced to wear a mask as part of MK Ultra mind programming. And I asked her
Oh.
to expand on that, and she's just sent me an article she's written as a result, in which she talks about this and how masks were used in MK Ultra to do exactly what you've just described. One of the points, again, I've been making over the last few weeks since the mask thing really kicked in is how it's deleting individuality. That's the whole point. And she says here, just read you a brief part of it. Masks are an obvious mind control device, and I'm disturbed so many people are complying on a global scale. Through the years, when I've seen images of people in China wearing masks that control the air they breathe due to pollution, quote, I knew it was much
Uh-huh.
of a population control mechanism of depersonalization as the
Uh-huh.
burqa. And she goes on to describe
Uh-huh.
how
Uh-huh.
Michael Jackson, who was an MK Ultra victim as well, he wore masks. Do you remember? and
Yep.
that masks are fundamental to uh, destroying not just individuality, but the sense of actually having a voice. See, the thing is that the target of this psychopathic web is the human subconscious. So what they do is they give you a conscious mind reason for something, just to keep conscious mind happy. In terms of masks, it's protecting you from the virus, and then the real reason is the subconscious effect. Because if they can put the perception programs into the subconscious, they will filter through to the conscious, and people at that point think they're having their own thoughts and their own perceptions and making their own choices when actually they're just following the program. So in terms of masks, you've got the deletion of individuality, you've got the massive symbolism of being silenced, and also submission. And a massive part of this deleting and targeting of the human spirit is targeting human self respect. Because this whole
Sure it is.
thing that's going on is a
Yep.
mind control operation. It's nothing to do with health. So if you have self respect, that self respect will resist impositions that you can see what they're designed for. And so, if you make a decision, I will do this because I've looked at the evidence and I can see there is validity in why I should do this, then you're still in control of your self-respect and your choices. But this is the
Right.
point that a lot of people miss, is that they give us rules and regulations, not least in relation to this pandemic hoax, that are obviously contradictory, are obviously ridiculous, and obviously make no sense. Because if you can get people who can see all that and still do it, you are seriously deleting their self respect, because they're doing what they
No,
know is ridiculous. And in doing
you
that, you
virtually
are
will know.
breaking
Yeah.
down their resistance, and you're turning them into submissive people. And those people wearing masks who know it's bad for their health, who know it's for some other reason and not their health, they are doing it anyway, and that is going to seriously affect their self-respect.
It'll degrade it. It'll break it down. It'll make them far more malleable, subversive. It'll teach them to follow along with the snitch culture ethos that they're injecting as well. They're actually paying people to rat out on their friends. This is really stretching the limits of what we used to call an organized society that we live in. It's tattered, it's fragmented, and but when I saw at Trafalgar Square, I'm I hope you have 100,000 next time. Those people know that they made a statement. They know who has the clout. They saw it right there. 35,000. Nobody touched them. The people are the controllers. They just have lost sight of it. And you brought it back to me. I was just amazed watching that. Who was the blonde woman who was kind of leading and coordinating there? The MC.
Oh yeah, she's been a strong voice over the last few weeks in YouTube videos, etc. Um, uh,
Yeah, very, very, very strong patriot.
yeah,
I thought that was
pointing out the
excellent.
nonsense.
Yeah,
Yeah, and she did a great
yeah,
job in emceeing that. But of course, what happened? See, um, you know that you've got the authorities concerned, worried when in the way
oh yeah.
in the way they respond. The one of the organizers, in fact, the most high profile organizer, was a guy called Piers Corbyn. He's the brother of Jeremy
Hmm.
Corbyn, the former leader of the UK Labour Party,
Right.
and they are very
Right.
different people. Let's put it that way. And So Piers Corbyn, when the crowd went away, it went down to Downing Street, which is just down Whitehall from the Trafalgar Square. Then the police moved in,
Uh-huh.
took their chance, and arrested him and fined him £10,000 for
Piers.
organising
Piers Corbyn.
yeah, Piers Corbyn for organising the
Uh-huh.
event, which will be sorted out, and in terms of the money, but it also highlighted how concerned these people are that they would go to that length. And by the way, um,
Mm.
for people that don't know London, you have Trafalgar Square, and then you have a quite a short road called Whitehall, which goes past Downing Street, and you go into Parliament Square, where the Houses of Parliament is. When this event was going on in Trafalgar Square, there was a Black Lives Matter march, far smaller, but way beyond the legal limit of currently of people, gathering together, and
Right.
not one of their organisers was arrested. Never mind charged and
No, no,
fined
no.
£10,000. So all these things you're bringing to the surface for people, even though they appear negative on one level. Actually, what's going on, and what we've seen, because these protests are going on all around Britain. My son Gareth, he's speaking at all of them around the country, and they the police were kind of, kind of just going with it, not being silly in city after city. The first
Right.
protest after Trafalgar Square, which was in Sheffield, you had police brutality kicking in, and Piers Corbyn turned up to speak. It had nothing to do with the organisation; he was just speaking, and they very brutally arrested him in Sheffield again. But we keep going. There's another one in Trafalgar Square on the 26th of September, like
Wow.
I
Yeah.
say. And what's also happened, Jeff, is you can see they're worried because they're starting to respond to us. So this week they have reduced the number of people that can meet together from 30 to 6. And what they've also done, because people
Oh, they're
are refused.
ratcheting down on it. They're trying to make it worse.
Yeah,
They're scared.
yeah, and
Oh,
what they've done also through this Boris Johnson and his
yeah.
idiotic sidekick Matt Hancock, the health secretary, is they've introduced marshals being recruited from the general public to go around and um, police shops and people if for breaking the lockdown laws and the social distancing laws and the taking of people's details at shops and restaurant laws or pubs and restaurant laws rather. And so they're responding to it and responding to it, and we are heading back towards lockdown without question. They're already signposting it.
House arrest. They're going to put you all under house arrest because the natives are restless and they're scared. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, well, see, me and the authorities are going to look each other in the eye, probably sooner rather than later, because I've not worn a mask. I've not sanitized my hands in this toxic gunge. I mean, anybody who wants to sanitize their hands, look at the back of the bottle, where two-thirds of it is telling you how dangerous it is and how it has to be disposed of as
All
hazardous
correct.
waste. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has issued a list of, and they're doubtful anyway, but they've issued a list of 75 of these sanitizer brands that are considered dangerous, not least for causing blindness and even death. So I've not done any of this stuff, and I don't social distance. People want to dart out the way of me, and I'm walking down the street. Well, that's their right. I ain't darting out the way of them because I'm not frightened of them. So the more they squeeze,
Hmm.
movement, the more that I will not um, obey and submit to it we're going to come eye to eye at some point, probably relatively soon. But I'm not backing off because this is a line in the sand here, and if we allow it to be crossed without challenge, the consequences, not just in Britain but around the world, are going to be horrific.
Well, we're talking about the end times if we don't stand up. Piers Corbin, he's been on this program. He's a weatherman, a weather
That's
scientist,
right, yeah.
and they're very, very well spoken. Uh, Good to see him involved like that. But here's the deal: when you go face to face with them, and that day is coming, they're going to have to confront you as this grows, and it's going to grow. I didn't know that they had ratcheted this down from 60 could get together now to only six.
Yeah, 30 to 6, yeah.
Oh my, oh my.
Yeah, and now we're going to
I
have
had a
these
gentleman on the
marshals.
first,
You know, these
yeah,
marshals. This basically an example of the Stasi in East Germany. Who are going to be walking around the
precisely.
streets and going into shops and restaurants and seeing that everyone's complying. And
Enforcement,
I mean, you know, so this the
communist thugs,
yeah, the reason they're doing this, of course, is people aren't complying in more and more numbers for the
right,
simple reason. This is
right.
the biggest wake up of all, Jeff, that the narrative coming from the government about this pandemic, and this is the same around the world, America too, and people's personal experience of it just don't sync. They don't add up. And this is breaking down. Well, hold on a minute. What's happening? And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it happen, and we must keep this momentum going. Otherwise, well, it's unthinkable. And when you consider having what we've just been talking about with masks, that they're making children wear them in school, what's that going to
This
do?
is damage. This is child abuse.
It,
No other way to phrase it or term it. Is you're damaging these children for the rest of their lives.
we're
You're
creating a
shaping
whole
their future
generation of children
history.
that will not be like previous generations.
No,
Much more submissive and
no
all the
sense
things
of
that come
self.
from that. And
No, no pride.
in Ireland, there's schools there. They say they're considering. Wait for this, having breathing breaks during the day, so the kids can take the masks off for a few minutes and then go back. So they're acknowledging that the children will not be taking in as much oxygen as they
How
normally
sick.
would. Uh,
How
uh,
evil
I
does
mean,
it
it's
get?
unbelievable.
Little children.
And you know, in relation to mind control and perception control, and indeed health control, there's a theme builds up here because when you look at 5G at 60 gigahertz, it interacts with the oxygen molecule and makes it more difficult for the body to absorb oxygen. And then you've got the masks, which are what?
True.
Preventing the people absorbing as much oxygen. And there are so many, not just health, but psychological consequences for not taking enough
That may be the
oxygen.
biggest story of all, David. I'm serious. We understand about hypoxia. We understand about rebreathing your own carbon dioxide. We understand the masks generate bacteria, which you'll breathe and inhale and become potentially ill from. But the psychological damage to especially young people is the part that bothers me the most. That breathing breaks, they're going to let the little children go out and actually breathe oxygen. Wow.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. But the acknowledgement. I mean, this is the thing you see. Um, it's not just mind control of the population that's been going on. You know, all this time. It's mind control of those in positions of authority and influence. There is an organization in Britain which operates worldwide called Common Purpose, which was started by Tony Blair. That's how bad it is. And Common Purpose, if you look at the Orwellian truth behind the title, is common perception. And what's been happening, and this has gone on for decades, Jeff, and this will be happening in countries all over the world, absolutely happening in the United States. the governments have been sending those in authority, in government administration, police, even fire officers, or people from throughout the system on training courses that are run by this common purpose and related organizations. And this has been to reframe the perceptions of those people. And organizations that have really followed this, there's one in Britain called UK Column that's done a lot of work on this over a long period of time. Have been approached over the years by spouses of those who've been on these training courses in these various professions, who've said the personality of my spouse has completely transformed since they've been on these training courses. And
Uh-huh.
one of the things that it's impacted upon is the dynamic between the police and the public, where more and more, we've all seen clips of FBI training courses where they are literally telling them that the public is the enemy. And what they've been doing, generation after generation, more and more to present day, is through hire and fire, they've been recruiting more and more people of a certain mindset. So they've been replacing your genuine, decent police officer who just wants to serve the community and replacing them with psychopaths. And you
I
can
was
see
just
the
going to say
dynamic
the exact
change as a
same.
result of that.
That's right. No, they're screening for psychopaths with an IQ of, let's say, 100. They don't, over here, they want around 100 maximum. That's it. I'm not saying all of you, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, are dumb or have IQs less than 100. That's not the point. The point is, most departments generally screen for people who are controllable. They're not going to become uppity. They'll take orders, and that goes along with a normative IQ in their world, which is around 100, 105, something like that. That's what they want. But the psychopathic aspect of it is not talked about. But I wonder, David, there are so many police chiefs in this country, and I'll bet in the UK, who have been flown, all expenses paid, to Israel to be trained by Israeli police and other security forces on how to handle the public psychologically, with a knee on the neck like they do to the Palestinians, etc. You're seeing Israeli dogma now being perpetrated by many police officers. They're being trained with it. That's what you're getting. When you get people who are 100, 105 IQ, who have a psychopathic bent, which, believe me, they're looking for in the entrance tests, the screening tests that they give to people who want to be cops. They are putting together a Stasi network, and this is not going to be fun. These people are going to be real trouble. I think you're onto it. I think you're right.
100%. The involvement of Israel and the Israeli military stroke police in this is very, very significant. Why on earth are the authorities in America, well, we know it's a rhetorical question, but why are they sending
Yeah,
their own police officers and police chiefs and military people too to Israel to be trained? I mean, there's 330 odd million people in America. I think they can train a police officer. I think they can get round to that. But no, it goes to
seems to
Israel
me we
because there is a
somehow
specific
got through with it.
way that they do it to again transform this dynamic between
Right.
the police and the public, so the public become not that which you are there to serve, but that which you are there to control. They become the enemy.
Correct. But it's exactly the same dynamic between the Israeli police and let's just say Palestinians. It's what they do,
Yes, it
and it's
is, and
all
I have people in Israel that Jewish people that keep me informed of what's going on there, because
yeah.
you see the propaganda about Israel, and what they do is they want to give you the impression that there is unity. There is not unity. I mean, Netanyahu is being faced with massive demonstrations in Israel.
Well,
And the other point to make is that the Israelis and, of course, the Palestinians alongside them have been subjected by the Israeli government to some of the most draconian of the lockdown impositions. And here's Netanyahu now talking about wanting to go back into lockdown. So, they treat their own population with as much, the Israeli government authorities, what I say is the cult behind it, they treat their own population with as much contempt as they do the rest of the world.
uh, you nailed it. That's exactly right. And I don't know how many people have been demonstrating out in front of his home in Jerusalem. What is it, 20, 30,000 at one point? What they have? They had a lot of people. I don't know how he's still in power. It must be that the globalists want him there, or he would have been out, I think, under any normal due process that they use to establish who their prime minister is.
You look at how
It
long
just
he's
doesn't
been
make
prime
sense.
minister, how many times
Oh,
he's been
of
prime minister,
course.
and
Of course.
it's kind of appropriate to mention this
He's the
today.
globalist boy.
Yeah, exactly. It's appropriate to mention this today because it's, of course, September the 11th. That I had a book published a year ago, literally a year ago, about 9/11 called
Huh.
The Trigger. And in there, I go into the whole story of a cult, a death cult, called Sabbatean Frankism, and which basically created Israel. The Rothschilds are massively, centrally involved in this Sabbatean Frankist cult. And so basically, the government of Israel is a front for the cult. And people talk about, Israel government this, Israel Mossad this, and Shin Bet that. But actually, they're all faces or masks on the face of this cult. And
Oh, it's
Netanyahu
like a
is,
hydra.
yeah, exactly. And Netanyahu is currently and for some time past has been the political face, the political frontman in Israel of this cult. And what you have is the cult is
Uh-huh.
driving policy that's not in the interests of rank and file Israelis, and that's where you're getting the pushback from, because it's some of the information that I've been sent about people that were in Nazi Germany. Who are now struggling to find enough nutrition, people's teeth falling out for lack of
Mm-hmm.
nutrition, and and
Yeah.
and this and they're supposed to care for Jewish people. It's a cult, and it has hijacked that whole culture without the knowledge of most members of it, to hide behind this constant recurring mantra of anti-Semitism to stop legitimate exposure of what they're doing. So you infiltrate a community, and this Sabbatean Frankist cult has done it in all over the world, and you promote yourself as being of that community. So when you start exposing them, they say, you're saying all Jewish people are what you say. No, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you are. Right? But it's racism against all Jewish people,
Oh,
and
you
so it's
racist, you.
yeah.
I
So
have.
so they're actually not only they've not only infiltrated this cult, infiltrated the Jewish community, the Jewish culture, and Israel, but they use the Jewish population to hide behind. And they've pulled a lot of people in to support them who think that in supporting the cult, which they don't know is a cult, they are promoting the interests of Israel, which is the opposite of what they're doing. They're promoting the interests of the cult.
Always. Always. I remember years ago we were talking, and it got to the point finally where we were recognizing that the elephant in the living room was Zionism, and nobody would talk about it. Now they talk about it commonly, but in the beginning, nobody would talk about it. I used to, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they all went after me because I would talk about it. And Gilad Atzmon is another one. He talks about it. He was Israeli born, you know Gilad. And
Yeah.
it's just these things are right there, and they need to be talked about. They need to be pushed out into the sunlight and out of the shadows. They're real. And they can't be allowed to be hidden away, which is the game. Don't you dare talk about that. Keep that. No, no, it's not there. Don't even look at it, or you'll be an anti-Semite. No, no, no.
Well, what I do in the trigger is follow the sequence.
That was a great, super important book, David. Super. You ought to re-release it under a different name or whatever, just because the information is crucial.
Yeah, well, we're now into another print of it, so it is getting out. But
Good,
but
good.
the I go through the sequence of the creation of this cult, which goes back to the 17th century. I think it goes back further, but this particular expression of it,
Right.
and how they actually this cult created Zionism. And what they've done is to equate Zionism with Jewish people. So if you challenge Zionism, which is a political philosophy,
It's
actually,
a secular, non-religious, geopolitical movement toward world domination. That's what Zionism is. And we've got 45 million Christian Zionists in this country. So, you know, that whole anti-Semitic argument is a joke.
exactly. And so we have a situation where they have equated it, not least with this updated, ridiculously extreme new version of and definition of anti-Semitism, which is being accepted by governments and authorities all over the world, which literally equates criticizing Zionism and Israel with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism,
Oh, they call it hate.
yeah,
They
and
call it hate speech.
anti-Semitism, of
How
course,
dare
being
you?
a complete
Yeah,
misnomer because it actually means anti-Arab if you look at what anti-Semitism really means. Um,
you got it.
and therefore, it's not just the global population that's been hoodwinked. It's the Jewish population overwhelmingly that's been hoodwinked into supporting something that is absolutely not in their interest because, as we've seen during the lockdown period in Israel, this force, this cult, has as much contempt for Jewish people as it does for anyone else.
It's true. It's very, very true. They look up, for all of you who don't know, just look up if you can find some good material, who the censors are for Facebook. Who those people, well, they're actually called, what do they call them? It's a committee. And they determine what is hate speech. They screen for hate speech and delete it from Facebook. The people they hired, David, all just happen to be Hebrews, Jews. They might possibly have just a bit of a bias in there. Anything mentioned about Israel, about Jews, about Zionism is immediately flagged or tentatively flagged as hate speech and deleted. You can't do it. I went looking for a lot of material recently, like you do, and many of you out there listening do. It's not there anymore. YouTube is literally erasing history around the clock, recreating history by omission and by insertion of skewed and biased new versions of historical reality. We don't know what our history even was. I'm not speaking about our generation. Younger people, Generation Z, for example, the Gen Zers, the Zoomers, they'll never know, David, what we know. Very few of them will ever know because it won't exist. It won't be online. Not that they really care much about it anyway. It's gone. History is being literally revised constantly. And the easiest way to do it is just to make it go away. And that's what they do.
Yeah, well, if you delete history, you delete the sequence of events that got you to the present, and therefore you skew the perception of the present. And also, if you, for instance, delete the history of the 100 million plus people who've died as a result of various expressions of Marxism and communism, then you can get young people to say, I've just had a great idea. What we need is Marxism. Because they don't know the history of what Marxism brings. But you raise an important point. You raise an elephant on the sofa, which I expose in many of my books, and not least The Trigger as well. And
Right.
that is what is staring us in the face, but people are terrified of looking at and speaking out about. And that is that the Jewish population of the world is 0.2%. If you said if you ask most people, what do you think the Jewish population ratio of the world is? They'd give you a figure that's much higher than that. Not least because
Oh,
Israel is,
they'd probably say 10%
yeah,
because of the number of people. And they're all in positions of influence,
yeah,
visibility, power, control, finance, banking, you name it. And there's usually a Jewish name there. Okay? So the perception is not 0.2%. I don't know what it got 6 million allegedly. There's that six figure again. We got 6 million allegedly in this country. And somebody said there were 6 million allegedly in Israel. So we've got this sixth thing going again. But it's just an astonishing overrepresentation.
yeah. The
And
point that
nobody
yeah,
will really
where I'm going with this is 0.2%, and the population ratio in America is 2%. Now, if you take away all the Jewish people who have no idea what's being done in their name by this cult, which by the
in their
way,
name.
which
That's right.
basic, by the way, hates Jewish people. The whole thing about the Sabbatean Frankist cult is that it inverts everything. It inverts the whole Judaism calendar. If there's a fasting day in Judaism, then it becomes a feast day in Sabbatean Frankism. It's a whole massive inversion, and it inverts everything. That's why the world is inverted. Now,
Right.
there's a chapter in the Trigger called Atlantic Crossing where I show how this cult moved in on America, and then you come to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, of course, now has reached a point of extraordinary control of information that people receive.
Oh, you
And
bet.
then you look
Yeah.
at who owns Google, which has completely skewed and compromised the search engine results. So you don't see alternative information, you just see the official narrative. Brin and Page, who run
Mm-hmm.
Google, they're Zionists. Then you go to YouTube, owned by Google, YouTube being the dominating, absolutely dominating video platform. And that's run by Susan Wojcicki, who's a Zionist. Then you go to Facebook, and you go to Zuckerberg and Sheryl Stanberg, the chief operating officer, and they're Zionists. Now, when you look at the ratios, and then you look at the concentration of power controlling the information that people receive, then it's not an elephant in the living room; it's a herd of them. But because of this manipulation of anti-Semitism
Mm-hmm.
as the defense mechanism, anyone who goes there is anti-Jewish. I'm not anti-Jewish. Good luck to them, I say. But not when this cult hiding behind that front is so destructive in terms of the human society. So I've been banned by
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. Of course I have. Why wouldn't I be? I've been banned by Facebook. Of course I have. Why wouldn't I be? Because and this is the other point that's very well worth making. It's that groups that are controlled by this network ultimately by this cult. There's a massive web of censorship and targeting people who are
Huge.
saying things that they don't want said. And over the years, I've been attacked by this network as being anti Semitic. I have nothing against Arabs. I have nothing against Jewish people, but I have something against a cult that's doing what it's doing. And then suddenly, Jeff, he's a racist. We're anti-racist. We were set up because we're anti-racist. Soon as the pandemic kicked in, and I started challenging that, it has nothing to do with on the grounds of one country or one group or anything. Nothing to do with anything to do with a particular group. They suddenly turn
No.
on me for
Right.
being for putting people in danger by challenging the narrative. So they switch from he's a racist to he's putting people in danger because they're not there because of racism. That's their excuse. They're there to silence anyone that is challenging the narrative that this cult wants to impose upon the world, and related networks that come out of this cult and operate all over the world.
Understand they do this real time, 25/7. They never stop. They've got their AI. If they don't have bodies to fill all the spots, they have it all under control. They own the internet. They created it with the help of the CIA. Remember, the first domain registration service was Admiral Bobby Ray Inman. He ran it, and it was called SAIC. What is that backwards? CIA's. CIA apostrophe S. They laughed at it. So the CIA created the internet along with Zionist money, or vice versa. They own it. They can kick you off, and you have nothing to say because it's a totally private industry, completely private enterprise, and they can do what they want. It's their business. It's not like it's protected by the government. It's not run by the government. It's not sanctioned by the government. It's a private business. That's how they've set up the internet. And all the tentacles go to all the different small areas and venues where people try to make a name for themselves. And everything is monitored 24 hours a day. And a lot of this is real time stuff. It's not left to the devices of an AI supercomputer. They have actual people who watch these things. They pay them. And online, how many people online, David, who fashion themselves or present themselves as opposition leaders, as challenging the official narrative, whatever they're talking about, are actually being paid by the enemy, created opposition. It's very common, extremely common out there. And that's another part that makes it difficult for people. I can't imagine anybody walking into the internet in this day and age and trying to make sense of things when people are spewing disinformation all the time, which by definition is 80 to 90% fact and 10 to 20% fiction, propaganda, mind control. So, how is the average person supposed to differentiate between those things? It's not easy. That's what you do so well. You help people see the focus of the reality that they're trying so hard to grasp, and they can reach out and touch it. And without people like you, and there are many, in fact, there's only one, it's you. I don't know how these people would have a chance.
Well, it's the old
Look at
technique of
Trafalgar Square.
it's the old
Yeah,
technique of control both sides and you control the game. But something else I do in the trigger actually is highlight the fundamental central importance to AI technology and smart technology of what's going on in Israel, because this cult has set up a massive military operation in Beersheba to manipulate the internet. Lots of people who attack you
right.
in comment responses are actually sitting in Beersheba, hiding behind anonymous names to try to control the narrative and to attack you when you put anything out there that they don't want people to accept is the reality. We have an expression of that in Britain called Brigade 77, 77th Brigade, which is a military
Mm-hmm.
operation which does exactly the
Mm-hmm.
same. And so we are in a situation where, because of the nature of the smart grid that's so fast emerging, that the whole thing can be, and I say it's absolutely planned to be, controlled from a central point. The whole grid can be controlled from a central point.
Yeah, you
Uh,
bet it is. Yeah.
and the whole anti-Semitism thing is just a smokescreen to stop the legitimate discussion
It's a
of all
canard.
this.
That's all it is. It's a canard. Yes. Used to intimidate, to scare, to damage, to ruin, to otherwise compromise somebody in the eyes of people who otherwise would look up to them. It's cheap. It's cheap. I don't like it.
Uh,
It's
and
very offensive to me.
the other point, Jeff, which again I go into in detail in the trigger, is that if you go deep enough into Mossad, it becomes the CIA. If you go deep enough into the CIA, it becomes British
Yeah,
intelligence. At the core,
running
all these
around.
intelligence agencies around the world, at the core, are actually the same network. And this is why, in the book, I show in detail how the central part of the 9/11 conspiracy was controlling the computer networks of the American government and the American military. They were controlling them through the CIA and all different aspects of this cult. They were controlling them in real time as events unfolded. And that's when you realize that, you start to see how they could have pulled it off. They were able to put dots on computer screens that were planes that didn't exist, and they were able to take dots off computer screens that there were planes that did exist, and they confused the entire response mechanism that morning by control of the computer networks. Because as I've been saying for so many years, don't confuse the apparent cutting edge of technological possibility by what you see in the public arena. These guys ain't working with that. They're working with something light years ahead of it.
At least, at least. They're so far ahead. It's plus or minus. I used to say 2-3%. They know in advance how the public, the sheep, the masses, all are going to respond to any given set of circumstances. They already know. It's not a game. It's just an operation. It's a psyop. They already know the answers. They know how it's going to work. Trafalgar Square, that's big on their radar. They're watching very carefully how the people respond. And you are at the center of that matrix. So they're watching. We all know this. Um, the next one is again on the 29th. You're going back to Trafalgar?
Yeah, it's being organised. I'm not involved in the
Yeah,
names, dates, places organisation. I turn up and speak.
yeah.
But yes, it's the 26th of September. And one other thing, Jeff,
26th.
what
Uh-huh.
the 26th of September. One other thing is that a week on Saturday, a week tomorrow, I'm doing that's the 19th. It starts at 5 o'clock UK time, so it's going right through the American daytime. I'm doing a four to
Mm-hmm.
5 hour presentation live on the internet. We've got our own player, so we're not dependent on who we've been talking about. And I'm doing a 4 to 5 hour presentation. It's the kind of presentation that I would normally do to an audience over the years, and it's pulling together
What
all the strands of what's happening now and the bigger picture it's involved in, and what we can do about it.
What day is this again, David?
This is 19th of September. It's a week tomorrow,
Okay.
and details at
All right.
davidicke.com.
Very good. David's book, you can see it on my homepage, or just go to davidicke.com. His new book, The Answer. Pre-orders taken. When will it be published and shipped?
Oh, it's published now, and it's being shipped. You'll get it in a couple of days because they're shipped from within America if you order in America or Canada,
Okay. Very
and
good.
it's
Yeah, we had a lot of
it's going down very well.